First up, we've got Nick Jones talking about NeSI's it's your time. Made me question myself, Nick, like always, but it's okay. So he's going to talk about NeSI's research data landscape, or our research data landscape. Nick Jones needs absolutely no introduction. Everyone knows Nick.
So I think I was looking quizzical, Rania, because you said NeSI's, and then you tailed off as I made you question yourself. So kia ora, Nick Jones, taku ingoa. I'm going to talk about our research data landscape, and this is very much a landscape view from very high in the hilltops. This is not the conversations that you guys have been having over the last 2 days. So forgive the brevity, it's very light touch, but it represents some work that we've been doing and was published at the end of last year, commissioned by MB, by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, to try and gain a helicopter view across the landscape. Because often when we talk about research data, we're actually talking in a very localised place or from a very specific posture or position. And so this was really coming together from a broad, sort of multidisciplinary, diverse perspective. It was a report that was undertaken in partnership with the Committee on Data and Research, and I'll mention who they are. And you can see there the authors of the report. Regina Sterling at Waikato was the lead author. She's in the Te Kotahi Research Centre with Maui Hudson there. Michelle Blake, who's the librarian at Waikato, and myself. Richard Hartshorn, a professor of chemistry at Canterbury, who's an expert in chemical nomenclature. And Tahu Kukutai, who probably needs no introduction, but for those who don't know her, she's one of our preeminent scholars on data sovereignty, and she leads the Data Iwi Leaders group, Te Kahui Rā Ronga. Did I get that right, Claire? I did, thank you. So we were looking at this committee that was being formed really to support some of the international connections around research data. And we were in discussion within our community there around, what should we do as a committee? What's the nature of this committee? What's the role of this committee? And one of the early ideas was to say, well, whenever we had a conversation as a committee and with our wider forum, we all had these quite disparate ideas about what such a committee might do, coming from all those different localised views. And so we cast around and we observed that internationally other countries had been through this period in their development, if you like, of shared views across a whole sector around research data. And they'd built these holistic views, these holistic reports looking at their landscapes of research data. And we thought, well, that looks like a good idea. If we're going to do other things, one thing we should probably do is get a view across the landscape to sort of orient us to start. So the report covers an Aotearoa New Zealand dimension. So it's bringing in te tiriti and aspects of data sovereignty. It's looking at the overall sort of ecosystems, the infrastructure, and then the cultures that exist within our communities. So I said I'd briefly talk about CODA. So CODA is a committee that was established, well, it was 2 years ago now, which is great. It was originally from a relationship between the Royal Society and the World Data System. And there was a relationship being established, and the World Data System said to the Royal Society, well, you need a national committee to have a relationship with us. And the Royal Society said, great, who should we talk to? And they said, well, Richard Hartshorn's involved in CoData, and he'd be a great person. So the Royal Society contacted Richard Hartshorn and said, Richard, we need a national committee on data for the World Data System. And, who do you know? What can we do? And so he reached out to some colleagues who reached out to some others, and pretty quickly we had a sort of a handful of people who had been actively involved in thinking about international connectivity and thinking about sort of research data from a more national perspective. And through that, we developed a view that actually it wasn't just the World Data System that would be good for us, because if we had one for the World Data System, we'd have to have another committee for co-data, and we'd have to have another committee for something else. And why would we do that? Why wouldn't, as a small nation, we just come together and establish a committee on our terms that could undertake the role that was required in collaborating into these international organisations? So a place to sort of nucleate discussions with a broad membership across the sector, and then a wider forum for engagement, for consultation, and for really bringing forward what is actually going on in New Zealand, and are there things that we could, as a committee, elevate and share, whether it's within our own agencies and government or perhaps into these international organisations, because it's not a one-way flow. It's not us saying, you know, how do we bring stuff, translate things from the international environment here into Aotearoa. It's recognising that we've got our own unique things that we can offer into that international environment as well. So the Research Data Landscape in Aotearoa, New Zealand is a report commissioned by MB. It was published in December, and I'm just going to step you through what it's about and some of the recommendations. It is available on the Waikato University Research Repository all the way through. You can see a DOI. I would encourage you to go and have a look at it and download it. Do both things, because that hits two different statistics on the research repository, so that's really good. Please do that and share it around. But always share the URL rather than the document, because that also is good for statistics. So, you got that? Great. So to inform this report, we undertook a variety of hui, of meetings across last year. The report was commissioned the year before, in late 2022. We started actually with a session here or in Hamilton at eResearch NZ. It wasn't well attended. We had cyclones and other things going on. But still, it was really interesting conversation to get us kick-started, and what it told us was we needed more meetings. We needed to get together with more people over a longer period of time to really make sure we were taking the opportunity to be informed about what was going on. And so then we structured a series of meetings over a few months. And from those meetings, some communities also said to us, and now you need more meetings because you still haven't had the time that's due to our community or to the efforts that we've already put in. And so through this, we gradually uncovered different little communities that were working across the sector in different ways and built connections with them either through formal meetings or through direct conversations to really try and elicit and pull together what is a very, very broad array of thinking and activities and ideas and aspirations across the sector. So that led into the report being published in December. And then since then, we've had some summer holidays, which has been great. And we came back, and last week actually we had our first engagement, which was with the Chief Science Advisors Forum. And so we got to meet with all of the Chief Science Advisors across health and environment and science and the Prime Minister's office, and share with them a very short version of this presentation, and then have a really good conversation with them around what it was they thought about this. And I'll share a little bit of that later. And then there's today, this presentation. So if you're interested in this conversation and you'd like us to come and talk, or one of us to come and talk, please get in touch. So key recommendations coming through the report. We observe that there's a real need for these sort of data governance cultures to be developed and to grow and evolve. And I think I sort of hear your plaintive plea, Wallace, around governance of the data. Is that at an individual researcher level or a research group level or a faculty level or an institutional level? Carol, this morning you talked about data governance and how fundamental it is in your environment in the HDR and biomedical research in the UK and the TRE environment. it's a very different thing than what we're used to. And so our little data life cycle diagram doesn't have a cycle. It doesn't say there's a particular direction or a particular order. It says there's a range of things that you need to do over time, and you're going to engage with them, for a lot of people, in a fairly haphazard manner, as befits what you're doing from a research perspective. But we do think that those data management practices do need a lift in maturity. Raising awareness of fair and care, and really thinking about what aspects of those are actually of most value at a point in time to a researcher. And investing in the infrastructure and the training to support the good governance and management of data. So I'll just briefly, I won't dwell on all of the bullet points and the recommendations. They are in the report. You're welcome to go and read them and follow up with us. So I'll just give you a very short view of the recommendations. But what is clear is that we're really not getting where we need to go in terms of the challenges and the opportunities with our data practices and investments here in Aotearoa at the moment. So, everything is mostly ad hoc. There's some leadership happening within some of the institutions, and some of you might be that leader, and you might be alone. There are organisations like CER and the University of Auckland that have been able to invest much more fully, and I think they'd argue that still very early on the journey. So there's a long way to go. But meanwhile, a lot of the advances we're seeing in digital technologies are becoming increasingly dependent on the quality of data that's made available to exploit them. So if we look at the large language model example, where is the data that we can use to train the foundation models and train the federated models? Who's got that in good qualities and quantities to support that opportunity? So the recommendations. So the first one is really looking at the infrastructure. I promise I didn't set the order of these. I'm not just interested in infrastructure, but you've got to make it possible. If you're thinking about, so remember the audience for this report is MB. It's going into the policy teams at MB, and we're trying to think about this from a research systems perspective. So we're trying to give advice into MB that suggests the range of things that they might need to do to really affect change within the broader research system. So the first one is make it possible, right? So get some fit for purpose data infrastructure and data governance, and whether it's taking what we've got today and evolving it, because as the first few points call out, it hasn't, the infrastructures we've got today for managing our data weren't developed at a time where we understood Maori data sovereignty, for one, or the modern technologies that exploit those data environments, for another. So we do need those fit-for-purpose infrastructures along with the practices around them, the governance around them. Make it easy. What is it that has been learned about research data management internationally, about making it easy? What have we learned ourselves? And can we build up some shared understanding of what that looks like? How is it that you incentivise the change in behaviours and develop the cultures that are essential? So we need those community-led support structures, skills training, practice sharing. Here we're doing that this week. There's a lot of that going on over the last 2 days. There'll be more tomorrow, and that's wonderful. How many places like this do we have? I'm aware of some committees where specific individuals, maybe one from each institution, might talk to each other, but do we actually have these more organic, bottom-up communities of practice and sharing, and how can we afford to facilitate those or sustain them over time? Whose role is that? Is it just an extra cost? A lot of things to think about as we think about making it normative. Make it rewarding. how do we recognise and incentivise this sort of work, this sort of effort? Is it just a cost for researchers? Can it be layered in to the way they do research? Can we incentivise the better governance of data? Can we celebrate it? And then from a policy perspective, make it required. So reinforce that culture of accountability and governance that is not there today. And we've seen some of this come through in some of the work from MB around research data management plans. I think they're a requirement contractually, but I'm not sure about the degree to which there's compliance and accountability. Is there? I don't know. Does anyone have the metrics on that? The percentage of research contracts that are compliant with research data management and open data plans across the funded research in New Zealand. We've all got that number, don't we? What's yours, Chris? Sorry, I won't put you on the spot. How do we get accountability and governance over this? So those are the sort of big areas of recommendation. We've had some feedback, which is good, in particular from that one engagement this year with the Chief Science Advisors. So there was a really good discussion around geospatial data and around the fundamental role that geospatial data is playing in the face of natural disasters and emergency response, and its ability to allow us to localise the response, given our understanding of data from another agency or from another data type that might tell us there's a problem, but in that location. Where are the newborn children when there's a massive flooding event that might need specific medical help, for example? Where are the areas of deprivation when you've also got those flooding events coming through that might not be able to support themselves with the right infrastructure? So they spend a lot of time talking about this, so I've spent all of my time supporting them in making that point. There were a few other things. Really happy to talk about this with anyone, and thanks to MB for supporting the work and to my collaborators for their wonderful mahi in writing this report. Kia ora.
Next up, we've got Connecting Researchers Anywhere from Yesh, Head of Networks, REANNZ.
Here you go. Kia ora, I'm Yeshaswini Ramesh. You can call me Yesh, everybody knows me as Yesh. And here I'm there to talk about how do we connect you all and what's REANNZ's goal of connecting researchers everywhere. Most of you may know what REANNZ does, but I'm just reiterating here. We are New Zealand's research and education network. We are a Crown-owned entity under MB. We are a purpose-built for connecting researchers and educators across the country. We have a national backbone of 100 gig. You can see the map. You listened to Rodney Wilson speak yesterday. We have switched to Sienna-based gear with One New Zealand last year, and we have 100 gig throughout the country and 20 gig to the regions. We are an anchor tenant on the second subsea cable that came to New Zealand, Hawaii subsea cable. Here are the three strategic pillars: global connections, making it easy for you all to connect and collaborate, and connecting Aotearoa. We are not only one, though. We are connected to a lot of entrants around the world. There are about 122 of them. And when I mean we're just connected, it's not just the physical connection or the logical connection that I'm talking about. We are collaborating across teams. We share our codes, tools, collaborate over products. EduRoam is a good example. EduRoam started in Europe, and it's deployed worldwide. So you can see how collaborative this global community is. This is what our core service is. REANNZ is there to give you the network. This is our live weather map, which shows how you're moving data across the region. Just got updated today. South Island got its third resilient link, so that if there is a flood, which takes out a bridge across there, we have another path so that we don't isolate people down south. Yep. Thanks, Wallace. And we provide the international networks. My team runs 24/7. We provide connectivity solutions. That's our bread and butter. But today I'm here to talk about how do you connect to our network? How do you get your data, and how do you collaborate to our network? You're more than welcome to get the connection to where we are by your own. You have your IT teams, you can do that. But we are taking that burden away from you, and we do it for you. This is our flagship product, Managed Access and Edge, where we connect your network, be it campus, data center, any of your offices, remote locations, we connect them. It's called Managed Access and Edge. It's MAE for short. And traditionally, we used to only connect dark fibers, optical services, because REANNZ is all about big data and big spaces and stuff. But we closely worked with our members, and one of the struggles they had was all these smaller sites. New Zealand is a place where research happens in the fields, in the small offices, and they had to find different connections with different providers, and that was a struggle for them. And they wanted us to do something, and we did. New Zealand is lucky to have a well-laid out fiber across the country with government subsidizing the LFCs, CORUS, TFF enable, and they've done a good job of it. And we use that, and we started something called MAE Lite. This is engineers naming their products, so it's the lighter version of what we connect with dark fiber, but over commercial broadband. It's similar to what you might have at home, but at the business SLA. We have about 43 sites in production. Most of them is probably University of Otago. Thanks, Wallace, and you can take feedback from him on how we've done. We've launched it in 2022. We have another 10 to 12 sites coming live in another 4 to 6 weeks. This week, in last couple of weeks, we have started playing with hyperfiber, with LFCs offering us that opportunity. So if there are data-hungry researchers, we have people, if you want to go above a gig, we can go up to 8 gig. We're starting with 2. If you want them, ask your IT team. But New Zealand terrain is not easy to have fiber everywhere. And you want the researchers to go to every corner of this country. So we, in last year, tried and tested 4G, 5G, rural broadband, satellite connections, anything that is available. And we have launched what we call as flexible, MAE Flex. There are about 10 sites in production. This is a picture of Plantain Foods' Clyde site, which had like a VPLS connection, and they wanted something there, and we put everything possible. So you can see all the 3 antennas, 4G, WISP, and Starlink. We tested them. We were able to see the performance between them, and we've retained a couple of services, and it smoothly fails over if there is a problem. That's another thing. You could ask your IT team if you want remote sites or for backup connections. The other thing is, of course, data center connect. If your organization is residing in a data center, we give high bandwidth, cost-effective solutions. We are in most of the major data centers, and we offer mostly 10 gig connections, and some of them will have 25 gigs. And as we will do our network refresh in the next 12 months, you will get 25 to 100 gig options as default. And Cloud Connect. I know a lot of your cloud and compute is moving to all the major cloud providers, and we can provide you the private direct link which can connect you to the WAN. That's about it. Thank you.